acceptance of it is the only thing that gives it the force of law.
Us basically consenting to it gives it the force of law.
It's like the government decide to make up a new rule, that only has power when you say, I agree with that, I'll be underneath that rule, I will understand that law. It's the difference really between, this is where you're coming in, real fundamental, legal and lawful. And what legislation does is it actually limits your rights and your freedoms. It regulates your rights and freedoms, and it restricts you from doing things that you are completely allowed to do lawfully. Whereas common law protects those rights and freedoms. It's the only time it needs to be rolled in is if somebody's rights are being infringed upon. And maybe just to get it in your minds, when have you ever heard on the news or the radio of an illegal killing? A man was killed illegally. It does not happen. It does not happen. It doesn't exist. It's always unlawful killing. There has been an unlawful killing, and that's where it comes in right there. You can see
That's common law
common
broken
law
right
in
there.
play. But as I was saying, I'm going to move on to the Brehon Law, because common law, it is a remnant of the British system, and it has a lot of protection, and it offers a lot of protection in there. But it has maybe a lot of other features to it that aren't so pleasing. For example, the death penalty was very common with common law. If you stole, if you did anything harmful, you were liable to get the death penalty. Also, the system of punishment and prisons, this all comes directly from common law, because when you go back as far as you can into Ireland's history, the second oldest law system in the entire world that we know of is the Brehon Law, which is the Irish law system. The only law that's older than that is the ancient Vedic laws of India. So we were living peacefully on our land using this Brehon law system. We didn't even have the notion of punishment. That wasn't a part of our system. There was no prison service. There was no police force. There was no death penalty. There was nothing like that. It was completely alien to us. And this is why the British had a lot of trouble trying to get us to adopt to their laws. That's why they brought in the penal laws, because they actually had to stamp out the cultural traditions that we had with the Brehon Law. So the people on the land then, they had to readapt to this system of punishment, and what they were coming from was what they call restitution. In Brehon Law, if you caused death, harm, or injury to someone, or loss rather, it was your responsibility to restore that debt. The way it's set up now is, let's just take an example, if you cause harm to my property, what they would do is they'll roll out a statute and they'll commercially contract with you for damaging the property. They'll bring you into court, they'll do the whole show, they'll extract money from you, they'll extract capital from you, and that goes into the state. So you're paying your debt to society, but all the while my car and my window is still smashed and I'm left having to pay for it. In Brehon Law, it was man on man. When these two individuals decided that this is good terms, this is how we'll settle this, that's how it was done. And the Brehon himself, the Brehon was the word for the judge, but they weren't.
The judge in Irish is Brehon.
Brehon, so. That's it. They weren't the judges as we have them today. They were a poetic class of people. They were, the old whale guards. They were mystics. They were mystics, and they would learn all the law to memory. There was no need for law books or anything like that. It was all learned to memory, and a judgment would be given in the form of a poem, in a 4-line poem. So if there was a dispute between two individuals, they would go and approach a Brehon, and they would say both sides of their story. And the Brehon would use the ancient law. They'd have to actually go outside to a field and take off stand with the grass under their feet. That was one of the requirements of Brehon Law. You have to be out and have the land under your feet so you can feel it in your heart. And they'd both say their sides of the story to the Brehon, and the Brehon would listen to both of them and give a judgment, poetic judgment based on the terms. Now, the way the system was, these people could turn around. If I was being accused, I could turn around and say, I don't like that, I don't want to listen to that Brehon, I want to have this Brehon over here. And you could go over and have a different judgment again, and again I can reject that. But the key thing is I have to make restitution. I can turn around and make an offer to this man myself. I broke your window, how about if I come and work in your house for this amount of time, It was about, we still had the community values, so we still had the peer pressure of the community maybe, that if you did cause any harm or loss to anybody, that was your duty to restore it to them.
I heard that people watching, but not necessarily related to
That's true, yeah. They could get involved. If we were having a case now in the Brenton times, everybody here could get involved and give their opinion on what was going on, you know. And ultimately, the person who's being accused, it was down to him to decide. There was no obligation to perform from what these people were saying. Because that's when we were living in a time when we were still free. The word obligation didn't apply to us. Another key thing with talking about the person and the man, we have invincible rights. The person has ascribed duties and obligations that are put onto him, and that's the real key difference there as well.
If Brenton law then would have recognised personal sovereignty.
Yeah.
Really.
Of course. So we're just going into a bit about legalese. You need, if anybody's interested in this information, you need to get one of these. It's a Black's Law Dictionary. There's a few different types. There's Ballantyne's, there's Bouvier's, but you need to get a law dictionary. And the reason being is this is your translator. You can open up a statute, traffic act, and you can go through and start looking at these words, and they'll be translated into, legalese, and you'll get a much firmer understanding of it, and you'll start to see how these statutes don't apply to you at all. So, as we've already looked at, the person, it's a corporation, and it's treated as having the rights and obligations of a person. Counties and cities can be treated as a person in the same manner as a corporation. However, corporations, counties and cities cannot have the emotions of humans such as malice, and therefore are not liable for punitive damages unless there is a statute authorising the award of punitive damages. And this word is key as well, society. A society is a number of persons united together by mutual consent. That's really key right there. If you do not consent to the actions of your government, and if you do not consent to if you look out and you're pissed off about the way society is going, well then you're not a part of that society because you don't consent to it. You can form your own society. You can be a society of one. You can be a society of 50. And when you form this society, you can begin to have your own set of codes and laws, you know.
And you can write your own law anytime, like you can write your own constitution that applies to you anytime you want. If you start a new society which was peaceful and you had your own land and all, they wouldn't even bother you, I don't think.
I always use the example of Rastafarians. That's a society that would maybe be a sub-group within a society, but the law or the legislation of the government, say, does not apply to that group. They can practice their cultural law, which allows them to smoke, which in our society we don't allow that, you know. So because they would be incorporated into ours, they're free to do that.
Let's understand as well that when all these acts and statutes and all that, they're basically contracts, contracts. And do any of us ever sign them? Do we sign anything that goes through government? No. So there's where our consent comes in. If someone's trying to force something on you or trying to gain authority over you, you have to consent to it if it's in this society we live in.
So an act, this is very interesting, this is from this book right here, anyone can come up and check it if they want. An act in the law. An act that is intended to create, transfer or extinguish a right and that is effective in law for that purpose, the exercise of a legal power. An act of the law, the creation, extinction or transfer of a right by the operation of the law itself without any consent of the part of the persons involved. And this is one of my favourite definitions. Again, it's in the book there, you can come up and check it out. A free man. So a free man possesses and enjoys all civil and political rights under a free government and is not a slave. And because everything is defined so precisely in law, that would leave you with the assumption that if you are not a free man, then you are a slave in the eyes of the law.
You haven't claimed such.
Yeah, exactly. You haven't claimed your status as a sovereign man, independent man or woman standing on the land, you know.
So we all are supposed to be sovereign, but as it states in the Constitution. But the Constitution is basically contract, which is fiction. So it doesn't really. We are not really sovereign in the eyes of the law at all. If we were sovereign, we wouldn't even bother going to court. Like there would be no courts in Ireland.